The scream shattered the silence, rising raw from the crumbling farmhouse walls. Emma, with tired eyes and disheveled auburn hair, froze in the night air, her breath fogging as fear coiled inside her chest. She whispered her own name, startled by how the sound echoed back, as if mocking her from the darkened doorway. The floor inside groaned, dragging noises slithering closer, with the rhythm of something heavy being pulled. Blood's metallic tang clung thick in the wind, souring the chill that crept into her lungs. A faint whisper unfurled again, rasping, deliberate, calling her name as though it already owned her. Emma's knees trembled, mind clawing for sense, yet her body refused to move. The farmhouse loomed like a grave with open jaws, and she felt it pulling her in, a hunger pressing against the night. Terror and disbelief collided inside her, and her soul knew something waited in the shadows, smiling unseen. The farmhouse stood behind her like a warning, yet Emma lingered outside, unable to flee. The night air was heavy, smothering sound, pressing close against her chest. She whispered, "No, this isn't real," but her own voice betrayed her, cracked and hollow. The trees swayed like skeletal arms, and the broken shutters of the farmhouse clattered faintly, echoing in her skull. Every instinct screamed to leave, yet curiosity chained her there, drawn to the mystery of that whisper. She rubbed her arms against the cold, but goosebumps came from fear, not chill. A faint glow pulsed from deep within the house, not steady like fire, but beating like a heart. Her gut clenched. She felt watched as though unseen eyes counted every breath she dared to take. Emma stepped back, but the farmhouse pulled her like a magnet. She felt a vibration in the ground beneath her boots, faint yet deliberate. "Stop it," she whispered, shaking her head, eyes wide. The night was void of sound, even the crickets gone silent. A cold shiver slipped up her spine as she realized the silence was unnatural, manufactured, deliberate. The farmhouse breathed, she thought. Each creak of the walls felt like inhalation, the drag across the boards like exhalation. Her chest rose and fell too quickly, panic rising. She swore she heard her name again, softer, from somewhere deep inside. Closer this time, almost tender. The thought of stepping closer sent her trembling, yet the idea of turning her back felt like begging for claws to grab her unseen. Her phone buzzed suddenly, sharp and startling against the suffocating silence. Emma gasped, fumbling to pull it from her pocket, screen glowing harsh in the dark. A text appeared with no sender saying, "Don't look under the bed." Her chest locked, throat tightening with disbelief. She glanced back toward the farmhouse, every fiber of her being rebelling. "This is sick," she muttered, gripping the phone tightly. The words burned into her vision, searing fear deeper than any whisper. Her breath grew jagged, pulse racing, hands trembling too violently to type back. She turned slowly, scanning the shadows, expecting someone to step out. But the only thing moving was the farmhouse door, swinging wider, creaking like an invitation. Emma's knees weakened as she clutched the phone tighter, her pulse drumming like thunder. "Who's there?" she whispered, though no answer came. The farmhouse seemed alive now, shadows swelling across its walls. She thought of running, yet her body betrayed her, dragging one foot forward, then another. Her breaths came ragged, too loud in the night. She felt the heavy certainty that someone inside was waiting, someone who already knew her every move. The whisper of her name came again, soft, mocking, impossibly close, right behind her. She spun, phone shaking in her grip, but nothing was there. Only the yawning night, vast and empty, as though it too was holding its breath, waiting for her to fall inside. Emma stood at the edge of the farmhouse yard, her chest heaving as the silence folded in on itself. The whisper that carried her name still rang faintly in her head, even though no lips had moved. She forced herself forward, steps crunching against brittle leaves that scattered across the broken ground. Inside, the air was damp and cold, pressing heavy on her lungs as if the house itself was breathing with her. She froze when the whisper returned, softer this time, almost sweet, wrapping around her like an unwanted embrace. The floor beneath her groaned, and she swore the boards shifted, dragging marks leading toward the back room. Every instinct begged her to run, yet the farmhouse seemed to pull her deeper, like gravity was no longer her choice. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Stop saying my name," but the answer came again, tender and cruel, closer now. Emma stumbled into the narrow hallway, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. She aimed its weak light against the warped walls, peeling wallpaper curling like dead skin. At the end of the hall, a flash of white caught her eye. Her breath hitched as she moved closer, hand shaking, light bouncing wildly. A small square rested against the floorboards, edges curled, colors washed with age. She crouched, heart pounding, and lifted the Polaroid. Her face stared back at her, pale and sleeping, mouth slightly open against her pillow. The photo felt warm, as though freshly printed. Her stomach churned, bile rising. "No," she whispered, voice breaking, her fingers trembling as she held the proof of someone watching her sleep. The sound of wood creaking overhead sent her gaze snapping upward. Someone else was inside. Emma staggered backward, clutching the Polaroid tightly, her breath ragged and uneven. The photograph shook in her hand, proof of a nightmare she couldn't deny. She turned, desperate to leave, but the front door had drifted shut with no sound. Panic struck her chest like ice, lungs burning. She reached for the handle, yanking hard, but it refused to budge, sealed as if welded to the frame. Her reflection stared back faintly in the dark glass, pale, trembling, unrecognizable. Behind her reflection, a faint outline shimmered in the shadows, there and gone in a blink. She spun but saw only empty air, the hallway stretching too long, unnatural. The photo slipped from her hand, landing face down. The whisper returned again, closer now, brushing warm against her ear. She screamed, stumbling forward, heart hammering. Emma bolted into the parlor, chest heaving, panic flooding her veins. She stopped when a flashlight beam sliced across the darkness. A tall man in his 40s, Detective Harris, stood there, his stern face lit by the glow. "Ma'am, what are you doing here?" His tone was sharp, skeptical. Relief tangled with fear as Emma cried, "Someone's been inside my house. They took pictures of me sleeping." Harris frowned, lowering the beam toward the warped floor. His boots creaked over the boards as he inspected the drag marks. "Old houses make strange noises," he muttered, dismissive. Emma shook her head violently, thrusting the Polaroid at him with trembling hands. He glanced at it, then back at her, brows furrowed. "Probably a prank," he said, though unease flickered in his eyes. Emma's pulse throbbed as she glared at Harris, frustration rising through fear. "A prank doesn't break into my home," she snapped, voice cracking. Harris sighed, shaking his head, but his grip on the flashlight tightened. He paced slowly, light sweeping the walls, revealing layers of mold and water damage. The silence between creaks stretched too long, too deliberate. Emma whispered, "It's watching us," her eyes darting toward the ceiling. Harris dismissed her words with a short laugh, but the corners of his eyes betrayed unease. He muttered, "I don't see anyone," though his voice wavered faintly. Emma clutched her phone tighter, her gaze locked on the shadows pooling in the corners. The air thickened, heavy with dread. And then the whisper came again, not just to Emma, but to both of them. Emma's heart raced as she followed Harris deeper into the farmhouse, her hand gripping her phone like a lifeline. The air grew colder, suffocating, as the narrow corridor bled into a back room. On a broken table lay more Polaroids, scattered like fallen leaves. She stepped closer, pulse hammering in her throat. Each photo showed her sleeping from different angles, her face pale, unaware. Some were taken inches from her bed, her breath fogging faintly in the images, proof they were recent. Emma's hands shook as she whispered, "This can't be happening." Harris scowled, jaw tight, but his eyes betrayed discomfort. "Whoever did this has been inside your house," he muttered. The truth settled like ice in her chest. The shadows around the room thickened, leaning in, as if eager for her to realize she was already too late. Emma reached for the nearest photo, her trembling fingers brushing its surface. The image was sharp, clearer than any Polaroid should be, every detail captured with unnatural precision. Harris leaned closer, frowning as his beam cut across the table. "These don't make sense," he said under his breath. Emma's stomach twisted when she realized one of the photos showed her not just sleeping but moving, her hand halfway through adjusting her blanket. She dropped it, recoiling as dread gnawed at her spine. "Pictures don't capture motion," she whispered, her voice fragile, breaking into a sob. Harris shifted uneasily, looking toward the ceiling. The boards groaned above them again, heavier this time, the weight of footsteps undeniable. Emma pressed herself against the wall, her eyes wide, certain something was alive in the dark, just beyond their reach. The footsteps above stopped suddenly, leaving only silence thick enough to choke. Harris whispered, "Stay here," and started for the staircase, his beam slicing through shadow. Emma shook her head violently, clutching the phone to her chest. A sudden draft swept through the hallway, and from the corner of the room stepped a figure she had never seen before. A tall man in his 50s, gaunt face hidden under a hood, eyes catching the faint light with a strange gleam. He raised one hand in a slow gesture, palm outward, as if to silence her. "They never leave once it starts," the man murmured, voice gravelly, carrying both warning and threat. Emma froze, throat locked, unable to scream. Harris spun around, flashlight beam hitting only empty air. The man had vanished, leaving Emma gasping in disbelief. Emma's breath hitched as Harris shouted, "Who's there?" His light swept wildly, but revealed only decayed wallpaper and warped wood. She whispered, "He was right here," but Harris dismissed her with a wave, irritation masking fear. The floor beneath Emma creaked suddenly, and her blood froze. Slowly, she looked down. A shadow moved beneath the boards, slow and deliberate, as if something alive crawled under the floor. The Polaroid clutched in her hand slipped free, fluttering to the ground. She bent to grab it, only for the floor beneath her to bulge upward as if something pressed against it. Emma staggered back, shrieking as Harris aimed the beam downward. The light revealed nothing, but the movement continued, skittering beneath them, circling like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. The farmhouse seemed to close around them, the walls groaning like lungs exhaling. Harris snapped, "We need to leave now," his tone betraying the fear he tried to hide. Emma nodded, but her legs felt like stone. She staggered toward the front room, every step echoing louder than it should, as if the house amplified her fear. The whispers followed, not just her name now, but words she couldn't understand, layered and overlapping. She clamped her hands over her ears, trembling violently. Harris grabbed her arm, pulling her forward. "Don't listen," he urged. Emma's vision blurred with tears, heart pounding so violently it hurt. She glanced back once more, and in the shadows, she swore she saw dozens of pale faces watching, only to vanish when the light touched them. The terror stole her breath completely. Emma clung to Harris as they stumbled into the farmhouse's parlor, both gasping for breath. The air pressed close, damp and heavy, but Harris spoke firmly. "We need to regroup." His eyes avoided hers, the flashlight beam unsteady. Emma whispered, "Why won't you believe me? You saw the pictures." Harris shook his head, jaw tightening, muttering, "I've seen people fake worse." Her stomach knotted, a seed of doubt forming. The Polaroids in her pocket felt like fire, proof he refused to accept. The house creaked again, groaning above them, and Emma's nerves frayed. She stared at Harris, his figure outlined in trembling light, and realized trust could mean death. The silence pressed tighter until Emma snapped, "Someone's been inside my home watching me sleep." Her voice cracked, echoing through the ruined walls. Harris stared at her, face grim, but his words cut sharp. "Or maybe you staged this." Emma's blood ran cold, disbelief mixing with anger. "Why would I ever do that?" she demanded, trembling with rage and fear. Harris stepped closer, towering over her, his shadow stretching long. His tone softened but carried menace. "Fear makes people do strange things." Emma's lips parted, the betrayal sinking in like a knife. His skepticism no longer felt protective, but dangerous, as if he wanted her helpless. Emma stepped back, shaking her head violently. "You don't believe me, you never did," she whispered, voice breaking. Harris's jaw clenched as he replied, "I've seen victims lie before." Her hand trembled as she pulled another Polaroid from her pocket, shoving it into his chest. The image showed her in bed again, this time a shadowed figure crouched at the edge. Harris's face stiffened, his composure slipping, but he quickly masked it with cold dismissal. "Could be trick photography," he muttered, though his voice wavered. Emma's stomach twisted, a deep dread whispering that he knew more than he admitted. The shadows leaned closer, listening, watching the fracture of trust. Emma's breaths grew short as Harris turned his back, sweeping the light toward the far wall. His voice came low, almost rehearsed. "You're not telling me everything." Emma's hands tightened into fists, her heart slamming against her ribs. "I don't even know what's happening," she cried. He spun suddenly, eyes cold, saying, "You brought me here for a reason." For the first time, Emma saw not a protector, but something darker. Someone hiding behind duty. The house groaned as if reacting to the betrayal, floorboards quivering beneath them. Emma stumbled backward, realizing Harris was not her ally but another threat. The parlor lights flickered suddenly, though no bulb remained intact, shadows twisting unnaturally across the walls. Harris muttered, "It doesn't want me, it wants you." Emma's stomach dropped, her pulse roaring in her ears. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, voice breaking. Harris' lips curled faintly, almost a smile, though fear lingered in his eyes. "You were chosen," he whispered. The words cut deeper than any scream. Emma stepped back, shaking violently, realizing Harris had known more all along. The farmhouse moaned, the boards under her feet trembling as if ready to give way. Betrayal had taken root, and Emma was alone in the dark. Emma staggered into the farmhouse kitchen, breath ragged, sweat clinging cold to her skin. The air reeked of mold and rust. From the corner, a frail figure emerged, a woman hunched with age and fear. Her face was pale, eyes sunken but sharp. She whispered, "I told them once. They never leave." Emma's chest tightened, trembling as the woman reached out, fingers shaking. "I survived," the stranger said, her voice cracked, "but I lost everything." The kitchen groaned around them, pipes clanging as if echoing her pain. Emma whispered, "What is it?" The survivor's eyes gleamed with terror as she rasped, "It doesn't want your house. It wants you." The words rooted deep in Emma's bones, colder than the shadows. Emma pressed closer, desperate for answers. "Why me?" she asked, her voice breaking. The survivor shook her head, eyes filling with tears. "It chooses," she whispered. "It watches. Once it takes a picture, it already owns you." Emma felt the Polaroids burn inside her pocket, a weight pulling her down. The survivor's thin hands trembled as she reached for Emma's wrist. "You can't fight it," she said. "You can only give in or run." Emma pulled back, shaking her head furiously. "No," she snapped, her voice cracking. "I won't let it." The survivor's lips twisted into something like pity, her body trembling as though the house itself drained her strength. The air turned icy, frost blooming across the broken window panes. From the hallway, heavy footsteps echoed. Detective Harris reappeared, his face tight, jaw clenched. Emma turned, eyes pleading, but he raised his hand, dismissing her. "You need to stop listening to ghosts," he growled. The survivor hissed, "He won't protect you." Emma's chest heaved, fury cutting through her fear. Harris swung his flashlight, its beam catching his weary eyes. He muttered, "This isn't about you, Emma. It's about what it wants." She froze, dread curling her stomach. His words felt too practiced, too familiar, like he had been here before. The survivor backed into the shadows, shaking her head violently. "He knows," she whispered. Emma's skin crawled, the betrayal clearer than ever. The parlor door creaked open suddenly. A neighbor, Mr. Dalton, holding a lantern, stepped inside, his brow furrowed. "I heard screaming," he said, voice trembling. Emma's eyes widened, relief colliding with dread. Harris snapped, "Get out," his tone sharp, but Dalton lingered. Emma whispered, "Please don't leave." But before she could finish, the shadows shifted. A black shape surged across the floor, swallowing Dalton's lantern in a hiss of glass. His scream cut short, dragged into the darkness beneath the boards. Emma shrieked, hands clutching her face as blood splattered the warped wood. Harris didn't move, his jaw locked, eyes following the shadows like a man who expected it. The silence returned, heavier than before, and Dalton was gone. Emma collapsed to her knees, her sobs breaking through the suffocating silence. The survivor's frail voice rose from the dark corner. "It takes them one by one." Emma's eyes burned as she looked at Harris, who stood frozen, face unreadable. "You knew," she whispered, her voice trembling with rage. Harris's lips twitched, but he offered no denial. The Polaroids spilled from Emma's pocket, scattering across the floor like fallen leaves. Each photo glowed faintly, her sleeping face staring back at her, eyes closed, mouth slack, unaware. She recoiled, shoving them away, but they seemed to multiply, overlapping, covering the boards. Her breaths came fast, chest tightening as her own face stared back 100 times. "It already owns you," Harris muttered, his words like a verdict. The farmhouse shook as if alive, groaning under an unseen weight. Emma clutched her chest, struggling to breathe, while Polaroids slid across the floor as though moved by invisible hands. She gasped when she saw the latest photo among them, one showing her kneeling exactly as she was now, tears on her face. Harris stood rigid, eyes hollow, his silence louder than words. Emma whispered, "It's still watching." The survivor shrieked from the corner, "It never stops." The board split with a crack, shadows writhing upward like smoke given form. Emma staggered back, her heart hammering, knowing the truth. The thing wasn't trapped inside the photographs. The photographs were only the door, and the door had now swung open. Emma scrambled back as the shadows condensed into a figure, tall and skeletal, its limbs stretching unnaturally. A faceless head tilted toward her, and in its hand flickered a Polaroid camera. The survivor sobbed, pressing her face into her arms. Harris's expression twisted, both fear and awe flickering across his features. Emma whispered, "No," but the creature raised the camera, flash clicking. She blinked, and saw another photo fall into her lap, her face distorted, screaming, though she hadn't made a sound yet. Emma trembled violently, bile rising as the truth struck her. The entity wasn't just taking pictures. It was creating her future, one frame at a time, erasing her choice with every flash. Emma screamed, lunging for the scattered Polaroids, tearing them with frantic hands. Each rip echoed like thunder, yet the photos reformed instantly, her sleeping face multiplying across the floor. Harris shouted, "Stop it!" his voice more command than warning. Emma glared at him, realization burning through fear. "You knew!" she accused, shaking with fury. Harris's lips parted, but no denial came, only silence heavy with guilt. The creature stepped closer, dragging its elongated limbs across the boards, each step groaning like death itself. Emma felt cornered, lungs collapsing with dread, as the entity loomed above, the flash ready once more. The survivor shrieked, "Don't let it take another," but Emma froze, too paralyzed to move. The flash exploded again, blinding white swallowing the parlor. Emma staggered back, clutching her eyes, and when her vision cleared, she gasped. A new Polaroid hung in the air, glowing brighter than the rest, showing her lying under her bed at home, lifeless eyes staring upward. Terror froze her blood, her fate printed before her. Harris muttered, "It's already chosen," his voice heavy with resignation. Emma shook her head violently, sobbing, "No, I'm still here." The survivor clawed at the boards, desperate to escape, wailing as the house sealed itself tighter. The creature tilted its head, faceless yet smiling somehow, and raised the camera again. Emma's scream tore through the silence as she dove for the glowing photo. Emma seized the glowing Polaroid, clutching it with trembling hands as tears blurred her sight. The photo pulsed with faint light, each beat sensing with her heart. "I won't let you decide," she cried, her voice raw with defiance. The shadow entity loomed, reaching its long fingers toward her, while Harris stood motionless, eyes glazed as if entranced. The survivor shrieked, "Burn it!" Emma fumbled for her phone's flashlight, its weak beam cutting against the darkness. She pressed the light against the Polaroid, smoke curling instantly, the image writhing as if alive. The entity recoiled, screeching soundless agony, its form convulsing violently. The farmhouse trembled, dust raining from the rafters. For the first time, Emma saw it falter, but only for a moment. The farmhouse rattled violently, dust raining from the ceiling as Emma pressed the burning Polaroid against the floor. The entity recoiled, its faceless head jerking unnaturally, but it did not fall. Harris stumbled backward, his voice trembling. "It can't be destroyed." Emma's chest heaved, sweat streaming as she shouted, "Then why am I still here?" The survivor cowered in the corner, her frail body rocking with sobs. The shadows surged like waves, swallowing the furniture whole, leaving the room skeletal. Emma clutched her phone light tighter, knowing the tiny flame of resistance was fading. The entity leaned closer, its long limbs twitching, and whispered without a mouth, "You belong under the bed." Emma's scream cracked the silence as the photo dissolved into ash in her hands. For a heartbeat, the entity faltered, its form flickering. Harris seized Emma's wrist suddenly, his grip like iron. "You were never meant to fight it," he muttered, eyes glazed, voice flat. Emma pulled back, horror rising. "You knew all along," she gasped. Harris's lips curled faintly, not quite a smile. "It needs someone to keep the door open." The betrayal cut deeper than any wound. Emma's breath hitched, realization striking hard. Harris was not a victim but a servant. The survivor screamed, "He feeds it!" before shadows gagged her voice. Emma's knees buckled, despair twisting with fury as the house roared alive. Emma tore herself free, stumbling into the hallway. Her tears blurred the cracked wallpaper, but she forced her legs forward. The Polaroids stuck to her shoes, clinging like parasites. She ripped them off, screaming, "Leave me alone!" Each photo lit faintly, showing her face in different states of terror. Harris's voice carried from the parlor, calm and cold, "There's no leaving, Emma. Once chosen, always chosen." The survivor's muffled sobs echoed faintly, then faded. Emma slammed into the wall, sliding down as her body trembled uncontrollably. The hallway stretched longer than before, warping with each blink. At its end stood the entity, waiting, camera in hand, its faceless head tilted in mock patience. Emma pressed her back to the wall, chest heaving as her phone dimmed. Its battery warning blinked red, mocking her. The entity raised the camera, the click deafening in the silence. A photo slid slowly to the ground, drifting like a feather. Emma snatched it, her stomach twisting. The image showed her lying under her bed, lifeless, mouth frozen, mid-scream. She dropped it instantly, shaking. "No," she cried. "I won't let it end like this." Harris's shadow stretched across the wall behind her, his whisper crawling into her ear. It already ended. The house moaned, boards splitting wider. Emma pushed forward, but each step dragged like sinking into mud, time collapsing around her. The farmhouse shuddered one last time, the air exploding into silence. Emma's phone light flickered out, plunging her into blackness. Her scream echoed as the entity surged forward, its limbs engulfing her. The Polaroid scattered, covering every surface, glowing faintly with her frozen image. Harris stood still, expression unreadable, as the survivor's sobs choked into silence. The boards creaked, a final drag across the floor, then still. The farmhouse settled, calm, as though nothing had happened. On the ground, one Polaroid remained untouched, showing Emma beneath her bed, eyes open and staring upward. A faint whisper curled through the night air, her name spoken once more, soft, eternal, claiming her.